Well, good morning to you again this morning. And sorry, that it's been a little late. We're really trying to get this new app going, and you'll see a lot of different things with it in the future. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get it to where, it starts generating the monthly reports. So you'll start seeing more of the expenses and what's coming into the church, what's going out of the church. You'll start seeing more of those things, and it's going to have an attendance record in it. Help us to keep better track of people, maybe who haven't been in the church, maybe for missed a couple services, 3 services, and it'll start giving us alerts, push notifications, and then it'll allow me to give those to other people, to send them out to people in the church so they can go just kind of check on them and stuff. So the things that we're working on are really going to help us this year. And like I said, I really want us this year to become more focused on one another, becoming the servants, loving one another. And I really believe that we're going to. I just believe that this is going to be the year that we're going to see in our church, as a whole, us develop more of a love and care, a servant heart towards one another, and service towards one another. So that's my hope and that's my prayer. I wanted to start this morning. I know today is Martin Luther King Day, and I don't want to take nothing away from that. So please, this morning, don't take nothing away from this. But I did want to talk a little bit about in Romans chapter 14, because I don't know sometimes if we know these things. The Word has a lot of things in it, and a lot of the Lord has a lot of requirements for us, and I don't know sometimes that we really read them and that we really do understand them sometimes. So that's what I wanted to kind of do this morning. So in Romans chapter 14, verse number 6, he says this. He goes, "He that regardeth the day regardeth it unto the Lord, and he that regardeth it not the day to the Lord, he doeth not regard it. He that eateth, eateth to the Lord, for he giveth God thanks. And he that eateth not to the Lord, he eateth not, and giveth God thanks." One of the things that Paul begins to just talk about here, I believe, to the church, is he's talking about us learning how not to, learning how to judge our brothers, and help them. You'll see back up in verses number 3 and 4, and he's talking about not judging a brother simply because he's not doing something that you're doing, or you're doing something that he's not doing. He wants us to be careful that we're not doing things in front of one another that the other would find offense in, because Paul goes on to tell us, not to be a stumbling block to our brethren. But what Paul is also saying here is that if there is, that's where the lines of communication really have to be open, because we need to be free enough to talk to somebody and say, just like we was talking Wednesday night, if I see you doing something, I should feel free enough to come in and just ask you, um, is that okay? I know when in my life there's been a lot of times that I've had to ask a lot of people, if certain things were okay, and because I didn't know. I didn't know, if buying certain products from companies, that I felt were offensive to the faith and offensive to believers. I didn't know if it would be right to support those. I didn't know if it would be right to buy those clothing. I didn't know if it would be right to do a lot of those things. So over the years, I've just had to go talk to people, but I always went to somebody that I felt could give me a non-biased answer. And what I mean by that is somebody that I felt was spiritual enough they would say, hey, I don't find nothing wrong with it, or hey, I've really not really thought about it. But at the same time, if somebody said, hey, yeah, I do feel that it's wrong, and give me the reasoning with it, so that I too myself could grow. The one thing I think that we forget about so many times is that we've been called to die out to the flesh. Now, I don't know about you, but just the other day I was sitting and a person come to us and they asked us to be praying. They said that this particular person that they didn't have long and they had deceased, but it's been a week or two ago. Forgive me, Lord. But anyhow, they said slowly that this disease that they had contracted, it had just slowly begun to just shut down one function after another function after another function within the body. And that before you know it, it was bringing forth death. That's the thing I think that, we got to be very careful about. That if we see things that we're willing to say, hey, is this right? Because what we don't want is to allow things to keep progressing within our spiritual man and cause spiritual death. It's easy sometimes to feel that you're okay and yet spiritually be just dying. And if we're not careful, if we're not talking to people about things, that we're experiencing, about what's brought that transformation or what's brought that within our life, then we may be very prone to just continue until we're just dead spiritually. And then here's the thing. If you're dead spiritually and nobody's coming to you, then guess what? You're going to remain. You're going to remain spiritually dead and not even know that you're dead. And so like today, on this day that we're reserving or we're honoring Martin Luther King, and, I'm fine with that. But at the same time, the way that I think that we should honor a lot of these things is thank God for men and women that he's brought along. Men that have fought to try to help other people receive rights and things that they need, to allow them to live a life that would allow them to be free to worship and to pray in a way that they deemed they should. Just like with slaves, I don't know, but I don't know if they were given adequate opportunities to go and to worship and to pray. And so because of that, I thank God that God sent men like Martin Luther King who helped push, for the rights. Abraham Lincoln, men who pushed for the rights, to allow those men to be free. Men who died on the battlefield during the Civil War, to allow those men and those families to be free so that they could worship, so that they could live a life. But at the same time, I'm thankful to the God. I don't just look at the person. And here's what I think Paul wants us to always remember. Don't always remember the person. It's just like, with my children and with my wife. Their birthdays, our anniversaries, things like that. Yes, I love them. But I'm thankful first and foremost to God who gave me my children, to God that helped me to raise my children, to the God that made it feasible for me to have the ability and the resources, who always provided a job for me, who always provided a way that I always had the ability to provide for my family while doing the thing that he wanted me to do. That was always the hardest thing in my life, was trying to do the work that God wanted me to do, and at the same time trying to be the man, the husband, the father that I knew I wanted to be also to my family. But I thank God that he always gave me that. I've missed out on a lot of things according to the world and the world standards. There was a lot of opportunities that come along that I couldn't take, that I had to say no to because they would keep me away, or they would cause me to be in places where I wouldn't be allowed to be the pastor or be the minister, be the person that God wanted me to be. But at the same time, God always made a way. God always took what I had and he always made it be more than enough. I mean, he has always been sufficient. He's always been more than enough, and he's always been faithful. He's been faithful. He's been faithful. He's been faithful. And the first thing that I could tell you this morning, know that God will be faithful. But let's not let ourselves lose the ability to recognize who it is that's providing all of these things. You wouldn't have your children, you wouldn't have your homes, you wouldn't have the things that you possess if it was not for the God. So don't always think about what you've got and try to set it up on a pedestal and try to have a day where you regard it and look at it and make it feel like it's the most important thing in that day. Because when we do, we allow the very thing within us to begin to cause other things to begin to grow. Because if I allow myself today to take one thing and I esteem it better and more than what I do my God, then what's going to be tomorrow? What's going to take place the day after? So what I want to say to you this morning is, yes, Give thanks today. Honor, the men who've made the sacrifice. But first, honor the God who gave us these people. And in days, we live in a society today that is always trying to make everything an occasion. And we want to make it momentous. And we want to have a day that we celebrate. And man, it's all that we do. Everything that day is about that person. It's about that child. It's about this. It's about that. Be careful with what you allow to be elevated into a position that it becomes higher than the God in whom you serve. And that's just something I say to us this morning is as we get ready to move forward. So we've talked about serving our brothers and talked about serving our sisters. It's easy to do it when you can schedule it. But what happens when a brother is in need on a day that you have already set aside to do something other, to celebrate something? What will you do then? And so this morning, I want to start off these devotions this week and just begin to talk about what are we truly thankful unto God for? Are we just thankful for God for the salvation? I thank God for my salvation, but man, I thank Him for so much more than that. I thank Him for everything He's given me in my life and the ability to enjoy it and the ability to have Him in my life to help me. Excuse me, to keep it in its perspective places within my life. I'm thankful that He never allowed me to let things get to a position. Now, I can't say that there wasn't times that I didn't elevate things. That when me and my wife were first married, and it was hard. I always wanted her to know, that she was it for me. But as time went on, I wanted her also to know that everything we've got, darling, every bit of love that we have for one another, every bit of respect, every bit of that we have gained, the ability to do, all comes from the knowledge that we've gained in our God. He's given us that. And let's not ever get to a place to where we allow what we have to become greater than what our God has given to us. So this morning, I just want to say, enjoy the day, but just remember the one that's given us everything. Amen. I love you. Have a wonderful day and be blessed of the Lord. Amen. Bye-bye.